Another live episode of the Health Detective Podcast. This is fun. Lucy, you're going to be the third live Health Detective Podcast, even though we just went live with you guys, with you the other day for you guys. Just to
Yeah.
be clear, Lucy was coming on wearing a different hat the other day. She was wearing the hat of AFNDP Director, which she still is. We haven't gotten rid of her, right? She's doing a great job. It's just that we wanted her back for podcast guest hat now, because one of those things that you guys might have heard if you watched the live the other day was we discovered, oh, we've never really talked to Lucy about her story. And I love having as many people in staff at FDN on the show, because the majority of staff at FDN, even though we have it's like 45, 50 people now with the contractors included, they
Yeah.
are FDNs and they support the company. It's an amazing thing. So we're here to strictly talk about Lucy's story. And if you are just tuning in with us because you're like, okay, wait, they're doing Health Detective Podcasts live now. What's that? So what we're basically doing is we want to go on YouTube, we want to go on Facebook and have some fun with different audiences. So we will be doing some of these live. Everything that's done live is always going to go on audio as well. It's usually just going to be a week later. So this is the earliest place that you could ever catch a Health Detective podcast. And if you wanted to catch a replay or just listen on Apple or Spotify, if that works better for you, all the audio versions will be available on our normal places about a week later. So with that said, Lucy, welcome back.
Thanks. So excited to be here. It's great
So
to be back.
Yes. I hate to be redundant, but obviously, especially for the audio people, some of these people are going to be listening and have no idea what we talked about live the other day. So
Right.
we will have to at least go through the first part of our conversation again, and then we'll kind of expand from there. But the first question I always ask on this podcast is what the individual symptoms were and when did they start? Because this is under the assumption that you have a health journey. We already know this. So what did those first symptoms look like, and when did that begin for you?
So for me, my first symptom was a panic attack. And then it basically didn't go away for like 10 years. I was healthy, believed I was healthy, completely normal, like regular upbringing, whatever, like regular job. I was just about to start a new job, so I went to bed early that night and I woke up at around midnight having a panic attack, and I had absolutely no clue what was happening to myself to me. I had never experienced anything like it before. I had not really even heard the words mental health. Definitely hadn't heard like panic attack, anxiety, nothing like that. I thought I was dying. And then literally overnight, my entire world changed. Like I don't think I can put into words how much it changed. I went to bed as like a carefree, happy, confident individual. And when I woke up, I eventually got back to sleep and woke up the next day. My whole world was like nothing I had ever experienced. I was terrified. And I didn't know what I was afraid of apart from having another panic attack, but I just felt terrified, like something incredibly bad was about to happen to me. Literally from the moment I opened my eyes in the morning to when I eventually got back to sleep, because sleep became scary because of having the panic attack in my sleep. And so that's kind of how my story started. And basically all of my symptoms were around mental health, especially the first, I would say 3 or 4 years. I was having multiple panic attacks a day. So 3, 4 panic attacks a day. And when I wasn't having a panic attack, I was in a constant state of fight or flight because I was afraid of having a panic attack.
Well, and so this evolves even past panic attacks then. That's and listen, I don't normally act like I know every Western medicine diagnosis in the world, but mental health is something I'm obviously very familiar with.
Mhm.
That sounds like panic disorder. That's panic disorder, for those that don't know, is when obviously you still have panic attacks, but panic disorder is characterized by this fear of the next panic attack. And so a lot of your life starts being revolved around making habits or making choices that will lead you away from what you think is going to cause the panic attack. So unfortunately, for those of us who have dealt with this, and maybe it's your first time listening, I dealt with very similar stuff to Lucy. That was my first health symptom. I might have had a few stomach aches before then. I think that's what was starting to happen at I was young. I was like 5. But panic attacks were the first smack in the face symptom where you're like, whoa, something's definitely wrong with this person, right? No, even if you don't know what it is, something went wrong. But it wouldn't be until 15 that the panic disorder came on for me. And it happened in the exact same way as it did for you, minus I was already awake. But when that panic attack came, for some reason, that was the one where it was so bad and so it was traumatizing. I went to the hospital that every day after that for a long time became this obsession with, all right, what do I have to do or not do so this doesn't happen again? It inevitably happens again. Your life becomes kind of consumed by this. Before we dive deeper into the mental health side, because you said those were really your main symptoms, I am curious, prior to that point in your life, because I think you said this happened in your 20s, is that correct?
I was 24.
Okay. So did you have any other health things prior to that? And I mean, even stuff like, did you get migraines? Were you on 20 course of antibiotics or something for sinus infections each year? Were you overall pretty healthy?
So at the time, yes, I wasn't taking any medications or anything like that. Now, like looking back, I was actually put on an SSRI when I was a kid for something completely unrelated to mental health. I had ME, which is like post-viral fatigue syndrome. It's basically where you're tired all the time and everyone thinks you're making it up, but it's an actual illness. So I had that as a child. So I was on an antidepressants from 14 to 19. And now I can see the impact that they have had on my like gut, and which I'm sure we'll get into. But I believe, even though I wasn't taking anything at the time, I do think that had an impact, but it wasn't the actual illness itself. It's more like what they prescribed me to deal with it that I think had the bigger impact.
Sure. How the heck do you get I mean, I know that they hand those things out like candy, the antidepressants, but that one even I can't figure out. So what's the logic there? Why do they give that for this condition?
So that specifically was prescribed to me because I was struggling to sleep, and it was meant to help with my sleep.
Okay.
And
So
I
you have
was
this-
14 years old, and the doctor and my mom were like, "Hey, you need to take these." So I was like, "Okay." Plus, I was 14, so I was like, "Oh, I'm on antidepressants now. My life is like really hard." Like, so I was like, "Oh, this is like an attention thing. It's gonna be great."
yeah.
But I didn't take them properly because I was a kid. I was like taking them on empty stomach. Like, and as I got older, I was drinking when I was taking them. Like, it makes me cringe thinking about it. But that's, yeah. And I think that had a really big impact. But like you say, it's a lot, unfortunately, of doctors' go tos when they don't know how to deal with illnesses that don't have actually, no, I take that back. It's a lot of go-tos for illnesses generally. So
Yeah. It's insane to me because I realized this as a kid because um there's certain stories I probably, I'll word this one very politically correct. Um a teenage friend of mine, when I was also a teenager, you're starting to get interested in girls, you're dating and stuff, things are happening. And there was certain things that he had some issues with, and he said that the doctor gave him this Zoloft stuff to help him perform better, is what I will say. And I looked that up and I found out that they gave a teenager Zoloft so that he could do his thing more. And because it makes you like numb to like a lot of sexual sensations. I'm like, what? Like, I thought that was crazy back then. And then you get older and you realize they'll give this for gut stuff, they'll give it to adults for those issues. Now, an adult is going to have the intelligence to not tell their friend that they're on that for that reason. Teenager, little bit of more of an open mouth when they have a few drinks in them, right? So you learn a few things about your friends. But they throw these things out like candy, and they're not particularly free of side effects. Right? It's like, holy crap, like, why are we doing this to people? In fact, the whole reason, the jokes aside, the whole reason that worked for my friend is because it is a side effect, that it makes people feel numb to these things. Yeah.
that was why they put me. So I was on something called amitriptyline. I don't know if it's available in the US. Obviously, I was in the UK at this time. So I was put on amitriptyline, and the side effect is like drowsiness. And they put me on a high enough dose so that I would be affected by that. And I cringe because what else was that doing to my body at 14 years old?
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't fully developed yet. My hormones were going crazy as it was. Like, I can't imagine the impact that it had at the time. And they just hand them out. And that was their solution when I first started having panic attacks. They were like, take these pills. No one used the words mental health when I went to the doctor, or panic attack or anxiety. No one said anything. He literally just wrote me a prescription and he was like, this will help you sleep, because I was having the issues with falling asleep because I was afraid of having a panic attack. And I took the prescription and I think I did it for like 2 days. And honestly, it made my panic attacks worse. When I called the doctor, she was like, oh yeah, we'll make you worse for about 2 weeks before it makes you better.
By the way.
Yeah, like talk about like preempting. And I was like, I don't want to do this. I was like, this is awful. Like I feel horrendous, but I don't want to go through what I went through like when I was a kid. I was like, I'm older now, and that's not the right path. Like I'm an adult, I can choose, and I don't want to take drugs. But because I chose not to go down that path, there was like no other paths at that time suggested to me. So they basically were like, okay, on you go. And that's why like my journey was such a long one, because I was just like in anxiety purgatory, being like, okay, I am terrified. There's nothing wrong with me, but like I'm terrified all the time and I don't know what to do.
Well, yeah, and so going back into your journey and kind of diving into the next steps here, so that this happens in your 20s, you have no idea what the hell this is. You just know something is majorly wrong, and it sounds like relatively shortly after is when you got this prescription. So, did you get that diagnosis? Like, panic attacks are pretty distinct. Usually, that one's not going to be missed. Did someone end up saying, "Okay, this is a panic attack"? Like, were you able to get help for this afterwards, or what was that? What would the next steps look like?
So for several months, I kind of floundered around. The doctor that had given me the prescription, like nothing more from them. They couldn't do anything to help me. And at the time, someone I was close to, I think they might have done a bit of research. I mean, we're going back like, pre-Instagram days. So it's not like I could just jump on and like, I don't know, search like fear or whatever I was feeling. So I think he probably went on Google or whatever, and he told me he found a therapist for me. And she was like a combination of CBT and hypnotherapy. So I went and met her, and she was the one that told me what had happened to me and told me that what I was dealing with. And I did some therapy and some sessions with her, and over time, but I'm talking like 4 years, the panic attacks like got better and eventually subsided. So I guess for the first portion of it, I dealt with it using therapy, but it wasn't enough. I was still always anxious. Like even when I wasn't having daily panic attacks anymore, I was always in fight or flight. Like I still woke up terrified, like not terrified, but like on edge.
So would that be, and I apologize from before, I realized, and Lucy will give me grace for this, but she knows how crazy everyone's schedule is right now. For some reason, I was connecting the story with the doctor and the SSRI to the panic attack thing. I'm like, wait, no, that was from the post-viral thing. Like,
well, no, it was. So I did. Sorry. I went to the doctor like literally maybe like 3 days after the first panic attack. I was just scared and I didn't know what was happening. And that he also wrote me a prescription. Go to sleep.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. Got it.
Like my thing.
All right, so that makes a lot more sense. But he didn't die. He just did it for the sleep thing. He wasn't diagnosing anything. Wow. Okay.
I found out from the therapist that.
Got it. All right, so that's even scarier. I mean, now you get this medication, kind of again, same category, right? But you still don't know really why the hell you're taking this. And panic attacks, for those that it's so tough to describe it. I know we tried to emphasize this even in the last show, which wasn't really about that, but still, I always feel the need to do it because it's something we've dealt with. It when people say you feel like you're dying, they mean that literally. It actually tricks your brain and body into reacting in such a way that you feel like you're on the train track stuck and the train's coming at you. It is that real, the feelings of death or doom. And if you look at the symptoms, it says it right there. It's like fear of impending doom. That's literally how one experiences it. So, man, it's already scary enough, but to not even get a name put onto it for a while, basically, until this therapist comes in and says what's going on. That's tough. And then so it sounds like you were dealing with what might have been called like a generalized anxiety disorder too. But did that get diagnosed, or is this just something that you're walking around with the feelings of?
Yeah, no, it was just the feelings. Like the therapist told me what I was experiencing. Like she said, you're experiencing panic and anxiety, but it's actually only years and years later that I was told by a doctor retrospectively, oh yeah, you had panic disorder and GAD. And I was like,
Wow.
oh.
Wow. Okay. I mean, and it makes sense too, I guess, like if this is pre-Instagram days, like things have changed.
Yes.
I always assumed the issues because I had a similar experience, but I was so damn young that I thought that was why. And I thought they didn't really recognize it just being a kid. But I
Yeah.
guess this was more of a widespread thing where, just like we all unfortunately kind of deal with a stigma around mental health, it still exists to this day, even post pandemic. It's gotten a lot better. I'm in the mental health space. I know that, but it's present. I think that affects health professionals too. I think doctors have their own stigmas. It's not that they're judging us for it. It's not that type of stigma, but it's an expectation of, is this person coming in with this? If they don't see it every single day, which I guarantee right now they're seeing panic attacks every day in the office, guarantee they're seeing depression every day in the office. Well, you almost expect it. It's not abnormal. Oh, Lucy comes in with this. Yeah, that's a panic attack. That's a panic disorder. This is what you do. But I don't know what it was back then. Maybe 1 out of 10 people were coming in with this. Maybe it was 1 out of 50. I don't have any idea. When did you start getting into then this more natural side of things? Because you're on this completely different journey. Beforehand, you're a healthy person, not necessarily interested in this stuff, not disinterested, but it's not your life. You have these experiences. You're going through more of a traditional treatment route. Is therapy is something that Eastern and functional can agree on, or Eastern and Western, I should say, could agree on, but it's still different than functional medicine. So when did you start approaching from the natural side?
So it kind of happened by accident, actually. When I was about 30, so like 5 or 6 years into my journey, just completely I began a journey of health, but not for mental health reasons. I just got to a point where I was drinking a lot and I was like, I don't want to live like this anymore. This is not really my thing. So I started looking into like taking care of myself more. So I started regularly exercising. I actually cut out gluten. Just thinking like, oh, this is like, I will admit, like at the time I was like, that was like the thing to do. So I was like, I'm going to give up gluten. But unbeknownst to me, all these things started to happen and I started to experience less and less anxiety. I didn't notice it at the time because I still had anxiety. So that was like, I still had anxiety. So that was really all I cared about, sorry. But looking back now, I can see the slow progression. And I got more and more interested in it. I mean, it took a few years and I basically decided that I wanted to help because I'd gotten to a place where I felt a lot better. I actually started doing like mindset coaching for
Nice.
people dealing with like mental health issues. And I kind of just fell down this rabbit hole of healing. And one thing led to another. And I read a book called Woman Code by Elisa Vita, I think.
Mhm.
And in the back of it, there was a 4-day diet plan. And the idea was actually not to help with anxiety. It was to help with hormone balance and things like that. But I did the 4-day diet and I had no anxiety. And I was like, what? I was like, all right, this hasn't happened to me in like a decade. I was like, there's got to be something into this. And from there, I just fell into this like gut health rabbit hole, started posting about what I was finding. And one of my friends actually messaged me. She was already an FDN and she said,
Right.
hey, you need to like look at this course because it sounds like, it's a great match. And I was looking to learn more about like gut health specifically at the time. And then, yeah, I found FDN, signed up, and the rest is history.
It's always fascinating to me how everyone's health journey is unique. Like the experiences are unique, but I could almost write a textbook exactly how this is going to play out in terms of people ending up in these things as career paths because we're kind of going along. We have these random health symptoms. We're like, what the heck? We follow the conventional route first because why wouldn't you? That makes sense. That's the intuitive way to do this initially is like, all right, yeah, I'll go to the doctor, figure out what's up. doesn't necessarily work the way we wanted it to. Start experiencing some other stuff. There's a few, maybe some lucky moments in all of it, right? You get the right book, you have a friend in the right course. It's cool how these things happen. And then all of a sudden you're the dang director of the Association of FDN Professionals. It's amazing how this kind of comes full circle. So was FDN the first course that you went through at that point?
No, it actually wasn't. I did a random gut health course. It was just like I'm sure you've seen them. I just bought it from some random coach, and it was
Shorter though.
Yeah.
I know. You get the Facebook ad, and you're like, dang, I'm looking to spend $500 today, baby. I need some credit card points.
Yeah, it was called like Buddha Belly or something really random. I couldn't even tell you the coach it was from, but it was just like a start on my path. But it made me realize like I was thirsty for like science, not just someone being like, do this, do that. And I think I started looking into IIN as well, and that was like the two. I was deciding between IIN and FDN, and went down the FDN path.
Yeah, and it's always worth mentioning because I did go through IIN first. So for those listening, that there's always going to be someone listening that's on the fence about both. And I know this because like 25-30% of the people that call us are postgraduates at IIN and they want to move into FDN.
Right.
It's not one or the other is bad or good. It has nothing to do with that. IIN is a traditional health coaching program. So if you visualize your dream career as sitting down with someone, kind of diving deep into the psychology and just going back and forth in that way, goal setting, stuff like that, all important, that would be the program. If you are someone that wants to dive deep into like the science, the lab testing, and really be able to help quite sick people, that would be the FDN route. And you can mix both together too. Nothing wrong with that. So we do have some comments that came through. So I will just shout some of these out. We had some people saying, love it. That's crazy. Just the journey and stuff. Tracy said, what a horrible, never ending cycle of fear. You feel so trapped in life when experiencing these types of things. Absolutely. Oh, and Ryu joined us again. Good morning to you, my friend. That's awesome that you got back. So when you did your self-study, your gut course, and especially FDN, I'm curious, what ended up being some findings of yours? Like, what did you end up realizing was going on in your body? Because for those that don't know, the FDN course includes lab tests and the cost of tuition. So just by going through FDN, you're going to start analyzing your own body. I'm curious what came up for you because you had been on the journey for a little bit by then.
So everything. So I had H. pylori. My gut was just a total mess. I had H. pylori, candida, a crap ton of dysbiosis. Like my good gut bacteria was like non-existent. Like everything was low. I think there were like 3 that were normal out of like the 8 or so that we look at. All of that, like I had really low gut acidity. My glucuronidase was like super high. Like everything was just completely messed up. My hormones were all over the place. And it just made so much sense. And actually it made me feel so much better. I think a lot of people get really freaked out when they see like a sheet with like red all over it, but it helped me understand that what I was dealing with wasn't my fault. Like it was my fault in the way that I had led a life that had created it. But the feelings, like what I was feeling, was not my fault. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, and I would even tell me if you agree with this, and if you don't, that's okay. I would even go as far as to say maybe none of it's your fault, but it is your responsibility and your ability to get out of it. That's probably maybe the middle of it.
Yeah, 100%.
Cool. So you find a lot of stuff. I totally get that because I think only the people who have had chronic symptoms truly understand this. Not necessarily mental health, but physical health. We're like the people, you get some bad labs back. You're like, yeah. And your family's looking like you're crazy. Why do you like this? It's not that I like it. It's I'm validated. Because you guys have to think, maybe you haven't been through this stuff and you're just listening because you're interested in the topic. That's wonderful. If you're someone like Lucy, who you have these symptoms, they're scary as hell. You go to the doctors. They're not really ever able to tell you fully until years down the road what was going on. And then you're still experiencing this stuff. When someone like that gets the lab results back and you see all these things that are bad, you don't get scared. You already knew something was wrong. That's not news to you. Everyone else just didn't know, right? You knew something was wrong. The reason that the labs can be so profound is because it's like, oh, damn, I have something I can work on too. And that's where that personal responsibility side comes in. It's like, all right, I didn't, when I say it's not your fault, what I meant was obviously you did not choose that. It's almost like I'm not judging the people that this has happened to. My dad smokes, but like if I smoke 2 packs of cigarettes a day and I get lung cancer, that would be a little more in the fault side, in my opinion, because that's not news to anyone that smokes cigarettes. That was a risk factor. I don't think that you knew the things that you were doing, considering, I mean, you said yourself, you didn't really even know about mental health. I don't think you ever knew panic attacks were a risk to what was going on. So it's the responsibility of us, though, to get out of these things. I don't agree with what I'm about to say, by the way, but I heard some doctor say it at some point, and I thought it was very interesting that you brought up the candida thing. There was some doctor that actually believed that all ALL, 100% of cases of panic disorder were caused by candida overgrowth. Now, I don't agree with that. I think it's oversimplified, but my point is the fact that they could even be a doctor that stood so strongly in that opinion because they've seen that correlated so many times. I think that's fascinating. And their logic was candida, it releases these toxins, right, as it's being kind of broken down, that it causes symptoms in the body that lead to panic attacks. And so a little off track here, but I got to ask, were the panic attacks, I know the one in sleep had to be random, but were the ones after that truly random, or did you feel like you had a physical symptom first that then led to a cascade of other stuff going on with the panic side of things? Or was it just, hey, I'm good 1 second and the next second I'm out here?
Well, when I was really going through it, I was always anxious, but I didn't have a specific trigger. You know how some people, like, if they get claustrophobic or so I was living in London at the time, and a lot of people would get anxiety, like going on the tube, because it's like underground and closed in. So that was like a trigger. I had nothing like that. So one time I thought I was better. I thought I'd escaped. I hadn't had a panic attack for like 6 months. I was like, this is amazing. Was living my best life. Was having lunch with my cousin in the middle of London. It was a beautiful sunny day. I'll never forget it. I felt so relaxed. And then all of a sudden, bam, panic attack out of absolutely freaking nowhere. And then the cycle kind of started all over again. So it was really frustrating to me because everybody that I spoke to, every professional that I spoke to would always say to me, what's your trigger? Do you have a trigger? So I wasted, and I deeply believe this, I wasted years looking for an external trigger. I didn't have one. Because all my stuff was internal, like my body was in chaos.
Okay.
It just was a nightmare.
And that's why we do the podcast, right? I like hearing these different stories. And it's one of the many reasons I don't fully agree with that doctor. I knew I was biased with it, but I found that it resonated with me to some degree because their argument was that when candida, all these toxins are being released, I think it's the acetaldehyde, a lot of that goes through the body. It can create symptoms like chest pain or feeling like you can't breathe or you get stuff on your skin or whatever. And I remember looking back, 99% of the time for me, there was 1 or 2 symptoms that would precede the panic attack. Like I felt like I couldn't breathe for a second. Now, of course, that's also a symptom of a panic attack. So it's kind of a chicken or egg thing, but it almost seemed like there was this moment where I go from, all right, I'm uncomfortable with this symptom to whoop, we just jumped into this. And obviously anyone who feels like they can't breathe would become pretty damn nervous very quickly. So I was just wondering, always curious about the different ways that people experience this. And I think sharing both of those is actually useful to people who will listen to this, because the panic attack thing is impossible to describe to someone else unless you've been through it, I think. And that's like many health conditions. And so for the people listening, I hope they're like, it's not the club you wanted to be in, I suppose, but they're like, all right, damn, these people are in my club too. I get this. So yeah, yours were truly random. You're having fun with someone you like, and bam, it hits you out of nowhere. Oh, nice. Ryu got some great comments. I got to throw this up here. Butyrate helps our mood and crosses the blood-brain barrier. Absolutely. Very nice. Thank you. Ryu, I got to ask, do you have any certifications, or what do? You came in last time too with a bunch of different knowledge. Are you just a self-studier? So I'd love to learn more about you and what you're doing. With that said, though, so you go through the FDN course, you find that all this crazy stuff's going on. How did the journey look after that? Like, when did you graduate FDN, by the way? I don't know that offhand.
January 2020.
Okay, cool. So you've been in for a few years, obviously. So you've had some time to implement the protocols and make some changes. What have the last few years looked like? Because it's not like you weren't up against a lot. The world kind of, took a poop, and it seems to never end. It just keeps on going right now. So if anything, this would be a time where it should be harder to feel better. And it looks like you're probably doing pretty damn good based on what I've heard from you. So yeah, what does the last 3 years look like in terms of the protocol and changing things?
It's Freedom. It's been total relief. It's been relief. Like, it's allowed me to have my life back. I mean, especially at the beginning, I felt like I wasn't living my life. I was literally existing. I remember watching people like passing on the street, like having a nice little chat and thinking, how are you living your life so easily when I can barely function? And it just seemed very, very unfair. But to have my life back now is, it sounds so silly to say because it's, all in your head, but I really did not have a life for a very, very long time. And FDN gave me that freedom back. Um, so I just couldn't get away from the anxiety. I was fortunate that I managed to get a hold of the panic attacks through therapy, but the anxiety was just always there. And it stops you doing a lot of stuff, even without the panic attacks.
I get that. That doesn't, well, maybe to someone out there, but to me, it definitely doesn't sound cheesy. When you are dealing with these things, any mental health condition, depression, whatever, it's all consuming. And you can have the best stuff around you too. You can be living in a nice place, you can have nice things. It's weird. It just takes over. And that's the main focus in life. And so the good part about this, what's really cool, because your answer when you said freedom, that was so interesting. I've never actually, it was just so genuine. That was a interesting way to answer that. I'm like, okay, that's a person who's been through this for real, right? You can't fake the way that you answered it, in my opinion. When you've been through this, though, this is the good side of it. Man, your perspective on just daily life that I think too many people take for granted is so different. Like, I'll be going through my normal life and I'm just happy, and it's not a perfect life, right? You have bad days. I'm not saying that, but I'm so easily able to be thankful and happy on otherwise normal days because I'm just like, if I'm not feeling grateful, I'm like, dude, thank God I'm not worried about when's this next panic attack's going to happen. I'm not having some suicidal ideation. Just enjoy the beautiful day. Like, that's what it is. And it's a very genuine gratitude. And it's a good way to live the rest of your life, in my opinion. So I don't know that I would want to do it over again. Certainly not for the a length of time that I did it, but I wouldn't mind a bit of it to get this level of gratitude now, because I don't know if I would have had the level of gratitude that I have if I hadn't experienced both sides of it. And it sounds like that's probably the same for you too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was kind of a bit of an idiot when I was in my early 20s anyway. So I don't really think, like, I don't know. I think it's definitely given me more purpose. I'm very passionate about mental health and about helping other people understand that there are other answers out there for you rather than just take this pill. Because to me, it's not a solution. I know this is, I don't want to upset anyone. There's nothing wrong with taking medication. You do what you need to do,
Mhm.
but it's not, to me, a long-term solution. Like, it's not going to solve the issue. And I wanted to solve the issue because I was so sick of feeling like it. And FDN gave me that key to solving it. And now I get to live my life. And you don't forget. Like, it does get easier, obviously, but you don't forget how terrifying and lonely and like the experience is. And it
Yeah.
does give you that perspective.
Well, and focusing on those solutions is kind of perfect timing. By the way, Ryu said they self-study and are interested in starting FDN potentially this winter. That's awesome. We'd love to have someone like you. Thank you for just contributing your self-knowledge to this podcast. We love having you.
Yeah.
Tracy said, and we'll kind of use this to start the next part here, is how do we explain to people outside of the health space that mental health can absolutely start in the gut? Her experience is that they don't get it. And an even bigger question there, in addition to that, is just what are some of these things that you think people need to nail down? I think most people that would listen to or watch something like this understand that medication is a temporary thing. I think they understand that FDN is not against medication at all, but no one woke up and was deficient in Zoloft. No one woke up and was deficient in Xanax. That is a factual statement. So you can use those things to get some help because, man, the stress that comes from dealing with these things and not getting relief is way worse probably than taking a damn medication. But it's like, can we go a step further and try to get you to the point where you don't have the stress and you don't also need the medication? That would be a wonderful thing. So from what you've learned over your time of studying and going through FDN and stuff, what are some big things that people need to nail down?
Ooh, where do we start? Okay, so blood sugar is a huge one, especially in the morning. I think we live in a very fast-paced society, and I think a lot of people don't take the time to look at how their body is functioning on a day-to-day basis and actually understand that this is having an impact. Like, our bodies are connected. And I'm very, very passionate about helping people understand that mental health is health. It's not just up here. It is like a full body experience, because when your body is struggling, it's struggling. So things go sideways and it doesn't function as it should. And anxiety, to me, in my opinion, is your body's cry for help. It's like struggling that bad. The reason I would suggest like starting in the gut and looking in your gut, there's a few, but hormones. There's a lot of hormones that are synthesized in your gut, like your happy hormones, serotonin, melatonin, for sleep. And then on top of that, they help with digestion. And if you don't have those hormones to create all these things, your body can't function properly, and things start sliding and it begins to kind of trickle, and then it gets bigger and bigger until you finally end up with like a million panic attacks like I did. And I deeply believe that all my stuff started because I wasn't taking care of myself. I was 25, 24, and I was going out at weekends. I considered myself healthy because I'm skinny. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I eat home cooked meals 4 times a week. I'm healthy. But in the meantime, I was like binge drinking, doing drugs at weekends, like just partying my ass off, not getting any sleep. And all of that has a direct impact on your body. We're using up our vital reserve, but because you're in your early 12, at least for me, I was like, it's fine. I don't care. Like, I'll sleep when I'm dead. That's like what all my friends used to say. And I said as well. But the impact of all of these things that you're consuming has an impact. Like, it's affecting your body. And obviously, like, a lot of things go through our gut, and that's where we have to digest things. So our gut and our liver are extremely important when starting like a health journey. And I mentioned blood sugar before, but blood sugar spikes when you are dealing with anxiety put your hormones into overdrive. And if your hormones are already crazy from being so anxious all the time, like you're already in fight or flight, your body is already overproducing cortisol, it's going to get even worse. So it's actually really, you can start just by looking at blood sugar, like balancing your hormones in the morning, doing simple things like eating within 1 hour of waking up, making sure you're eating a balanced breakfast, skip the fast food, like the cereal bars, things like that, anything that's like high in sugar and carbohydrates, like I tried to avoid when I was dealing with this.
Okay. And I'm not recommending people go do the 4-day diet, but I am fascinated looking back to that you did this 4-day thing based on a book recommendation.
Yes.
And it did work, at least to some degree, for the anxiety and stuff. Was that something like why? Okay. How about this? Because people are going to take that then and run with it and try to go do it. So instead of giving too many specifics on like the exact day by day diet, what do you think was included or not included in that worked? Was it a gluten-free thing? Was it eat 1 hour after waking up? Like, what was included in that led to such quick results?
So it was, to be honest with you, I couldn't even tell you what the exact
Sure.
meals were in the book, but it was whole foods approach, and it was 3 meals a day. And it was said like you need to eat, I think they said within 2 hours. I've just personally found that an hour is better for my blood sugar. So it was the whole foods approach. And it was things that I hadn't really considered eating, like a lot of like fish. And I know saying that out loud now sounds really like silly, but at the time, I just didn't think about what I was eating, if that makes sense. I didn't have that connection yet. And the focus is very, very much on like nutrient dense food, and they were talking about like omega-3s for hormones and getting fish, and there was quite a lot of like beans and things, lentils. It's a great book but just like to go check it out. But it just opened the conversation for me that this was potentially a path to go down. And and kind of examine.
Okay, cool. And then just to be clear, what was your career before? Because I think I remember this, but what was your career before kind of working like in an FDN? I mean, obviously you love this company and the things that we've done. You're now are literally in a huge position here, which is amazing. So what were you doing before this if you never got anxiety and panic attacks?
I was in digital marketing.
Okay, cool.
I
All right,
actually,
that aligns.
yeah. So I actually, the time I started having panic attacks, I was in sales. So high stress. But I mean, yeah, like I said, I didn't feel like a whole amount of stress, which is why it kind of blew me out the water. Like I suddenly was like stressed all the time. But yeah, I was in sales and then transitioned to digital marketing throughout the years.
Looking back now, if because you did the therapy thing, you did the medication thing, you did obviously a lot of natural stuff. I know that we're not against any of those things, but I'm almost curious about the order and the urgency that would have been taken if you knew then what you knew now. In other words, like if someone's listening right now and is still actively dealing with panic attacks, what would be like what steps do you go do tomorrow if you're that person that's struggling right now, clicked on this because they saw the title and like, holy crap, I need this to go away ASAP?
That is a really great question. I do feel fortunate that I'm in the position that I am an FDN. But the first thing I would do is if I had a panic attack tomorrow, I would immediately run all of the labs that I have available within reason, like our foundational labs on myself, and work from there. I would look at my diet. I would look at my sleep schedule. I would look at like the last 3 months in terms of stress load and how I'm managing it, and course correct. Like maybe I'm not dealing with stress in as healthy a way as I need to. So maybe like start looking at like meditation, exercise. One thing I would also do, which I know a lot of people think is counterintuitive, I might pull back on my exercise. A lot of people use exercise to help with anxiety, and it absolutely does. But I think sometimes some of us have a tendency to go really hard on exercise when we are anxious as like a like an escape, and actually that can kind of be like backwards, because anxiety is a stressor on our body. It's a good stressor, but it's still going to add stress hormones to the mix. So I would probably look at reining it back to like yoga, Pilates, even walking. Like when I went through my healing process, I just walked every day. That was the only form of exercise that I did. Obviously, everyone is different. You need to check in with yourself about how you're feeling after exercise. But I really would just kind of hold myself accountable, like take a step back, look at how I've been behaving, and then look at what I can do to move forward in a more cohesive way, I guess.
Well, and that's actually kind of a common theme of your podcast today, because you brought this up in different ways a few times. You talked about I wasn't thinking about what I was eating. I thought I could just kind of do this forever. And then even this, you gave steps, but you also recommended introspection, more or less, like what's going on. And I think that's how a lot of us operate on a daily basis with many different habits that we have. This goes totally outside of health. This could be with finances, it can be with relationships. And we expect teenagers to do it, but we do carry this into our 20s, 30s, and beyond. Some people will do this for the rest of their life. You ask someone, well, what were you thinking when they made like a bad decision or whatever? I wasn't.
Right.
And you realize like you weren't. And I remember thinking that all the time. I never understood that question. I'd always get in trouble as a teenager. And my parents were like, what the hell are you thinking? I'm like, I wasn't. Like I was just trying to have fun. Like if I was thinking, I wouldn't have probably done it. And we can laugh about that now, but we really do. Sometimes just taking a second to sit with ourselves and analyze what's happening can be one of the better solutions. But then
Right.
what happens in today's world is who the hell gets a second to actually think? Because you're either going to work all day or you're traveling to work and then you get home and you're completely stimulated on these things or whatever. It
Yeah.
is amazing what a simple 10-minute break, whether it's through walking or whatever, without music, without the audiobook, without whatever, can do. Like those thoughts are going to come up. And if you're so uncomfortable with the thoughts that come up that you can't even do that, I think that's not something to fear. That's actually a room for healing in and of itself, right? Because many people will not want to do that because of those thoughts. Like, I don't know if I'd keep repressing that even farther, right?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think we definitely need to be comfortable with those with being alone, with alone time, like with processing. Because if you're not processing it, it's going to go somewhere. And if you don't deal with it, you're going to have to at some point, is basically what I'm trying to say. So you may as well do it bit by bit. I think that that's a much healthier approach to it.
It's just like the symptoms, right? You can ignore maybe minor symptoms for a while, but eventually it's just going to keep building and building. So the best answer is always just address it where it's at, do what you can. And then you start learning to tune in with your body a lot better. Some of the stuff tricky. I still, my God, the exercise one is still, it's almost like I can't believe it. And that's my problem. And I'm not good at translating in my head that, all right, I worked for 10 hours. So that is a stress on the body. So, because I'm not like landscaping, right? I'm doing podcasts, I'm doing sales calls, whatever. Like I don't translate that the same as a physical labor job. And this just happened the other night. I came home and told Maddie I was so dizzy after jujitsu, and she's like, "Dude, you did the weightlifting this morning. You worked 10 hours, and then you went and did jujitsu." Like maybe I'm like trying to think of, oh, is it this reason? Is it a sinus thing? Is it water? Maybe it's just too much. Like could that be it?
Yeah. See, and that's what I mean, though. We think like. I mean, on paper, that sounds great. It is amazing. You did like your strength training, you did like your cardio, like that's great. But together, side by side, like that's probably an early start and a late finish. And then you've got all the work in between. Like that's stress all day on your body. But we don't view it like that, which I do understand. But like you say, I think sometimes we just need to like take a step back and be like, all right, I'm going to have to implement a rest day.
Well, and I think that's the final lesson of the day, right? Whenever you have these symptoms, mental health or physical health, it's a warning sign. And when you learn to think about stress in this more large holistic view, you'll start connecting things that you've never connected before. I eventually realized, because acne has been one of my symptoms, over exercise and stress of travel, almost every time I travel, it's not bad, but I almost always get 1 or 2 breakouts. It's like, most people would say that has nothing to do with it. Well, it's like, yes, it does, because it's stress on my body. I could eat the same way, but you send me on planes and jumping time zones. That's stress. That's why that happens. So it's a learning thing. The symptoms are always the warning sign saying, hey, we need to dial this back a little bit, and we can choose how we dial it back. I can probably afford to work 10 hours a day if I don't do anything else and I rest the other 6. But that's a trade-off. So you need to decide where you're at with your life. If you got 4 kids, maybe the 10, 11-hour work days are not the best, not the best deal, right? So Lucy, I know that, I mean, you're basically full-time FDN and stuff. I apologize if this isn't the case. You don't even have a place where people could go and find you necessarily to work with you. That's not something you offer at this time, correct?
It's not something I'm offering. I do still have my Instagram, and I do post about like mental health and stuff, because I'm very passionate about people understanding that it's a full body program.
Okay.
But I'm not taking clients right now.
That's totally, sorry, just wanted to double check. I know we kind of talked about that off air, but that's even better. Thank you for coming on today, especially in the middle of the workday, and just sharing this with people. This always needs to be said. The mental health stuff, there are real consequences when people don't believe that there's not hope when they're dealing with mental health issues. And I don't think I need to get any more in depth than that. So when they can hear these stories, if you're the one that they relate to and they're like, well, damn, if she could figure this out, maybe I can. That's all that matters, man. That's kind of the best thing ever. With all that said, then we don't have to worry about where people can find you. Lucy's just here helping out, good of her heart. I will ask one final question, though. It's our signature question on the show. It's a little similar to what we talked about before. So if it ends up being an overlapping or even identical answer, no problem. But the signature question on the Health Detective podcast, Lucy, is if we could give you a magic wand and you could wave it and you could get every single person in this world to do one thing for their health. So you can either get them to do one thing or you can make them stop doing one thing. What is the one thing that Lucy would get them to do?
Oh, that is a good question. Okay. So I don't know if it's not really stop doing, but I really, really, really want people to understand that the impact of the crap that they put in their body is what they get out. So I feel like I'm okay. So like our bodies are almost like a computer, and the food we put in is a code, right? And if we put in a bad code, we get a bad result. And that is like food. Okay. So if we're putting in food that we know is not great for us, that's what you're going to get out. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm not explaining this very well. But basically, I want people to understand that when you are going to the supermarkets and you're buying the food off the shelf, the prepackaged stuff, and it's got all these ingredients in that you don't know what they are, that has an impact on your mental health. It has an impact on your body. And I would really love people to fully grasp that and understand, because I think a lot of people do not.
It makes total sense. And what I always tell people is just try it. I mean, you waste time in your life all the time. Do 30 days, say, and do for 2 weeks. My gosh, you're going to feel a difference. For 2 weeks, just say, I'm going to eat this way. If it doesn't work, that Detective Ev person and Lucy person were crazy. That's fine. You can come back to us and say that, but just give it a chance. Just
Right?
give it a chance to see what do you have to lose, right? Tracy said, amazing story and info, Lucy. Thank you for sharing. Awesome. Guys, if you're watching live, I'm going to edit this out for the audio part, but we do have our Health Space Unmasked event coming up on Saturday. We're going to be talking about trauma with Dr. Amy Apesian, I believe is how you pronounce her last name. And I'll be doing some hosting with that. So it's either going to go really good or really bad, because I've never hosted the Health Space Unmasked event. You can sign up for that at fdntraining.com/unmasked. And again, that's just for the live viewers if you happen to see this before September 2nd. But you can always sign up for our Health Space Unmasked events at that link, because we do it the first Saturday of every month. All right. Thanks, Lucy, for letting me do my little advertisement. We appreciate you being here today. This was great.